What would you do if the person you trusted most in the world literally left you to die? Not in some dramatic movie scene, but in the most calculated, cold-blooded way possible. My husband thought terminal cancer would make me weak, desperate, easy to manipulate. He thought wrong. What happened next shocked even me, and changed everything I thought I knew about survival, betrayal, and the power that comes from rising from your own ashes. My name is Sarah Chen, and 6 months ago, I was dying. Not just from the grade 4 glioblastoma that had taken root in my brain like some twisted seed, but from the slow, suffocating realization that the man I'd loved for 12 years was counting down the days until I'd be gone. I used to design skyscrapers, buildings that stretched toward the sky like steel prayers, structures that would outlast generations. I spoke 3 languages, ran marathons, and once gave a TED talk about sustainable architecture that got over 2 million views. That was before the headaches started, before the double vision, the seizures, the way words would disappear from my mouth mid-sentence like someone was erasing them in real time. David held my hand through the first round of treatments. He researched clinical trials, drove me to appointments, held my hair back when the chemo made me vomit until there was nothing left but bile and exhaustion. "We're going to beat this together," he'd whisper, his fingers tracing circles on my back. And I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. But something changed after the second round failed. The way he looked at me shifted, like I'd become a burden he was calculating in his head. The insurance calls got longer. His gym sessions became 3-hour disappearances. New cologne appeared on his dresser, clothes I didn't recognize in the laundry. When I found the credit card statements showing expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to, flowers charged to accounts I couldn't access, I told myself he was just coping badly. I was too busy fighting for my life to fight for my marriage too. Lisa entered our lives like a whisper at first. David's new colleague at the financial firm, he said, young, ambitious, sympathetic to our situation. She even sent me a care package, once herbal teas and organic soaps with a note that read, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." I actually thanked her. Can you imagine? I thanked the woman who was sleeping with my husband for her kindness. The doctors gave me 6 months, maybe 8 with aggressive treatment. David's response was to suggest we try something different. "There's this doctor," he said one evening, sitting on the edge of our bed while I lay curled under blankets that never seemed to keep me warm anymore. "Dr. Morrison. She runs a holistic treatment center in Colorado. Completely alternative approach. But the testimonials are incredible." I was so desperate by then that I would have tried drinking moon water if someone told me it might help. Hope, no matter how thin, feels better than surrender. "How much?" I asked, because we'd already maxed out 3 credit cards on treatments insurance wouldn't cover. "Don't worry about money," David said quickly. "Lisa knows someone who used this treatment. Complete remission after conventional medicine failed. Dr. Morrison only takes a few patients at a time, works out of this cabin in the mountains where the air is clean and there's no electromagnetic interference." I should have asked more questions. I should have researched this miracle doctor myself. But when you're dying and someone offers you a lifeline, you don't examine the rope too closely. You grab it and pray it holds. We left on a Tuesday morning in October. David loaded the SUV with more supplies than seemed necessary for a 2-week retreat: camping gear, emergency rations, first aid supplies. "Better safe than sorry," he said when I asked. "Cell service is spotty up there." The drive took us deeper into the Colorado wilderness than I'd ever been. Hours passed without seeing another car, another building, another sign of human life. The GPS signal died somewhere around the 3rd and Mark dirt road. David seemed to know where he was going, following routes he claimed Dr. Morrison had sent him, though I never saw any written directions. "How did Lisa's friend find this place?" I asked as we bounced over ruts and rocks that made my head throb worse than usual. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Word of mouth, I think. These alternative healers, they keep things quiet. Can't have the medical establishment shutting them down." The cabin appeared in a clearing surrounded by pines so tall they seemed to scrape the belly of the sky. It was smaller than I'd expected, more run down. The windows were dark, the porch sagging under the weight of old snow. No other cars. No signs of life. "Where's Dr. Morrison?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "She'll be here," David said, already unloading bags. "She likes to give patients time to settle in first. Assess their energy, she calls it." I let him help me inside because my legs had become unreliable things that folded without warning. The cabin smelled like mildew and mice. A pot-bellied stove sat cold in the corner, the only source of heat in a space that felt more like a trap than a sanctuary. But I said nothing. When you're desperate, you make excuses for red flags that should send you running. That night, David made dinner on a camp stove canned soup that tasted like salt and sadness. We ate by lantern light because the generator wasn't working. He seemed nervous, checking his watch, glancing toward the windows like he was waiting for something that never came. Maybe Dr. Morrison got delayed, I suggested. Yeah, he said too. Quickly, the weather's been unpredictable. She'll probably show up tomorrow. I woke up alone. The space beside me in the narrow bed was cold, like David had been gone for hours. My head felt like someone was driving nails through my skull worse than usual. I called his name, but only silence answered back. The cabin door stood slightly open, letting in October air that cut through my thin nightgown like ice. I dragged myself to the window. David's SUV was gone. So were his clothes, his bag, the medications he'd been managing for me. On the small table where we'd eaten dinner, I found an envelope with my name written in his handwriting. Inside, a note that changed everything. Sarah, I can't watch you die anymore. This is better for both of us. By the time you read this, I'll be back in Denver. The insurance policy will cover everything. Lisa and I need to start over. I'm sorry it has to be this way, but you were going to die anyway. At least here it'll look like an accident. Hypothermia, maybe dehydration, natural causes in a remote location. No one will question it. I really did love you once. I read those words 3 times before their meaning sank in. Then I laughed. Actually laughed, until the laughter turned into something that sounded more like howling. My husband hadn't brought me to a healer. He'd brought me to my grave. The reality hit in waves. No cell service. No food beyond a few energy bars David had left behind, probably to maintain the illusion that he'd tried to take care of me. No medication for the seizures or the pain. No way out except on foot through terrain I could barely navigate on my best days, which this definitely wasn't. I should have panicked. Should have screamed or cried or beaten my fists against the walls until they bled. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: clarity. The fog of false hope lifted, and for the first time since my diagnosis, I could see exactly where I stood. David wanted me dead, had planned it, had probably been planning it since the moment the doctors said terminal. While I'd been fighting cancer, he'd been fighting the inconvenience of having a sick wife. While I'd been grateful for his support, he'd been calculating how much my death would be worth. But here's what David didn't understand about dying people: we've got nothing left to lose. And that makes us dangerous in ways healthy people can't imagine. I gathered what little strength I had and started walking, not toward the road that was too obvious, and David might have someone watching to make sure his plan worked. Instead, I followed what looked like a game trail deeper into the forest. If I was going to die, I'd die on my own terms, not his. And if by some miracle I survived, David was about to learn that leaving someone for dead only works if they actually die. The trail wound through pines that seemed to whisper secrets I couldn't quite understand. My legs shook with every step, and my vision blurred and cleared like a broken camera lens. But I kept moving because stopping meant accepting David's version of my story, and I wasn't ready for that ending. That's when I heard the voice. Hello? Is someone there? At first, I thought I was hallucinating. The brain tumor had done that before: phantom sounds, conversations with people who weren't there. But then I saw her, a woman in her 60s with silver hair braided down her back, wearing hiking boots and carrying a walking stick carved from what looked like driftwood. Oh, my God, she said, rushing toward me as I swayed on unsteady feet. Are you all right? What are you doing out here alone? I opened my mouth to answer, and collapsed instead. The last thing I remember before everything went dark was strong arms catching me, and a voice saying, I've got you. You're safe now. When I woke up, I was in a real cabin, warm, clean, filled with the smell of herbs and wood smoke. Sunlight streamed through windows that actually had glass, and somewhere nearby, I could hear the gentle hum of a generator providing actual electricity. You're awake, the silver-haired woman said, appearing with a steaming mug. I'm Dr. Elena Morrison. And you, I'm guessing, are the patient I was supposed to meet 2 days ago. The name hit me like ice water. You're real? She laughed, a sound Like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Very real. I was expecting you Tuesday. When you didn't show up, I started hiking the area, thinking maybe your husband got lost. I found your note instead. My note? Dr. Morrison's expression darkened. She handed me a folded piece of paper, the same stationery from David's goodbye letter, but this one was in handwriting I didn't recognize. Dr. Morrison. Sarah took a turn for the worse and decided she couldn't go through with the treatment. She asked me to tell you she's grateful for your time but has chosen to let nature take its course. We've gone home to be with family for her final weeks. Thank you for your understanding. David Chen. The betrayal was even deeper than I'd imagined. David hadn't just abandoned me to die. He'd impersonated me to make sure no one would look for my body. I never wrote this, I whispered. Dr. Morrison nodded grimly. I figured as much when I found you collapsed on the hiking trail. Your husband paid for 2 weeks of intensive holistic treatment, then sent this note trying to cancel. I've been doing this work for 30 years. I know the difference between someone who's given up and someone who's fighting. Over the next few days, as my strength slowly returned, Dr. Morrison told me the truth about David's alternative treatment. He'd contacted her 6 weeks earlier, claiming his wife was desperate for help after conventional medicine failed. He'd asked detailed questions about her location, her treatment protocols, even her schedule. Information he claimed was for insurance purposes. He was gathering intelligence, she said as we sat by her fireplace, me wrapped in blankets that actually kept me warm. Planning to impersonate me, probably. Make it look like you'd come for treatment and died naturally. No one would question it. Remote location, terminal patient, experimental treatment gone wrong. But David had made one critical mistake. Dr. Morrison wasn't just some quack hiding in the mountains. She was Dr. Elena Morrison, former head of integrative oncology at Denver General, who'd left traditional medicine after watching too many patients die from treatments that destroyed their quality of life without extending it meaningfully. She'd moved to the mountains to practice a different kind of healing, one that focused on living fully rather than just surviving longer, and she was about to show me both were possible. The treatment wasn't mystical or supernatural. It was science. Just science that most hospitals wouldn't touch because it couldn't be patented or mass-produced. Carefully calibrated nutrition, meditation techniques that had measurable effects on neural inflammation, plant-based compounds that worked synergistically with whatever fight my immune system had left. But more than that, Dr. Morrison gave me something I'd lost in the chaos of diagnosis and betrayal: agency. For the first time in months, I had choices about my own life. What to eat, when to rest, how to spend my possibly limited time on Earth. It sounds simple, but when you've been reduced to a collection of symptoms and statistics, simple choices feel revolutionary. The question isn't how long you have, she told me one morning as we watched the sun paint the mountain peaks gold. The question is what you want to do with however long that is. I wanted justice, not revenge justice. There's a difference. Over the following weeks, as my seizures decreased and my energy slowly returned, Dr. Morrison and I researched David's plan with the thoroughness of detectives. We discovered he'd been forging my signature on insurance documents, had taken out additional life insurance policies I knew nothing about, had even started selling our assets while telling buyers I was too sick to handle business matters. The betrayal went deeper than adultery or abandonment. David had been systematically erasing my legal existence while keeping me alive just long enough to avoid suspicion. I was worth more dead than alive, but only if my death looked natural and his grief looked genuine. We could go to the police. Dr. Morrison suggested. Attempted murder, insurance fraud, forgery. He's looking at serious prison time. No, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. I want him to think his plan worked. I want him to get comfortable with his new life, start spending money, make promises to Lisa about their future. And then I want to watch it all crumble when I walk back into the world. Dr. Morrison smiled, the first time I'd seen her look anything close to wicked. You know what? I think I like your approach better. We spent 2 months planning. Dr. Morrison had connections throughout the medical and legal communities, people who'd grown tired of watching insurance companies profit from human suffering, who understood that sometimes the system needed a push toward actual justice. While David thought I was decomposing in a Colorado forest, I was getting stronger. The holistic treatments, combined with a new experimental drug Dr. Morrison had access to through her research network, were actually working. My tumor wasn't gone, but it was stable. More importantly, my mind was clear for the first time since my diagnosis. We gathered evidence methodically. Financial records showing David's theft, the forged insurance documents, audio recordings from Lisa bragging to friends about her inheritance windfall, even photographs David had posted on social media showing him grieving at expensive restaurants while wearing the watch I'd given him for our 10th anniversary. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would return from the dead at the moment David thought he was safest at his engagement party to Lisa, which they'd scheduled for December, just 2 months after my supposed death. Enough time for the grief to look genuine to outsiders, but not long enough to seem disrespectful. Dr. Morrison helped me arrange everything. A lawyer who specialized in insurance fraud, a private investigator who documented David's spending spree, even a photographer to capture the look on his face when he saw me walk through those doors. But the most important thing she gave me was a different relationship with my own mortality. I might still die from this tumor, eventually remission isn't the same as cured, but I was no longer afraid of death. I'd already survived the worst thing I could imagine, the complete betrayal of someone I'd trusted with my life. Everything else was just details. December 15th, the Ritz-Carlton downtown, ballroom reserved under David's name. I watched from the parking garage as guests arrived, our old friends, David's colleagues, people who'd sent me sympathy cards just weeks earlier. Lisa wore white, which felt like a choice. David wore the suit we'd picked out together for his promotion celebration, back when we were still we. I waited until the toasts began. Through the windows, I could see David standing with his arm around Lisa, accepting congratulations from people who believed he was a widower courageously choosing to love again. His speech about not letting tragedy keep us from happiness had several people in tears. That's when I walked in. The ballroom fell silent in waves, starting from the people near the door and spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. I walked through the crowd in a dress Dr. Morrison had helped me choose, deep blue, elegant, clearly expensive. I looked healthier than I had in over a year. David saw me when I was maybe 10 feet away. The color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Lisa followed his gaze and actually stumbled backward, nearly falling over a chair. "Hello, darling," I said, my voice carrying in the absolute silence. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic was murder." What happened next was beautiful in its chaos. David's business partner, who'd been managing the firm's finances in David's grief-stricken absence, started asking very loud questions about where the company money had gone. Lisa, realizing she'd been conned by a would-be murderer, began screaming at David in front of everyone. Several guests started recording with their phones, because nothing says party favor like watching someone's life implode in real time. But the best part, the absolute best part, was watching David try to explain my resurrection. He couldn't claim he thought I was dead without admitting he'd left me to die. He couldn't act happy to see me without explaining why he was engaged to another woman. Every word he spoke dug his hole deeper. "Sarah," he finally managed, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "We thought, the doctors said a lot of things," I replied calmly. But Dr. Morrison had different ideas. "You remember Dr. Morrison, don't you? The one whose name you've been using to cover your tracks." That's when the FBI agents Dr. Morrison had contacted stepped forward. Turns out, forging medical documents across state lines makes attempted murder a federal case. Who knew? They arrested David right there in the ballroom, in front of all his friends and colleagues. Lisa tried to run but couldn't get far in her white stilettos. The investigation that followed revealed David had been planning my death since my diagnosis, had even researched other methods before settling on abandonment in the wilderness. The trial lasted 3 weeks. David's defense team tried to claim temporary insanity brought going back 6 months, including internet searches for hypothermia death timeline and how long can someone survive without medication. I testified on the final day, told the jury exactly what happened, from the fake treatment center to the forged goodbye note. When David's lawyer tried to suggest I was an unreliable witness due to my brain tumor, I asked if he'd like me to recite the architectural specifications for his law firm's building from memory. Turns out terminal illness doesn't automatically make you stupid. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. David got 15 years for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and financial exploitation. Lisa got 3 years probation for knowingly benefiting From fraudulent insurance claims, I got my life back. But more than that, I got perspective. Surviving David's betrayal taught me something no doctor or therapist ever could. I am not my diagnosis. I am not my prognosis. I am not what happens to me. I am what I choose to do with what happens to me. Dr. Morrison and I started a foundation together, the Second Chances Center. We help people who've been given terminal diagnoses find alternative treatments, legal support, and most importantly, hope that extends beyond just medical hope. Hope for agency, for dignity, for the chance to write their own endings. My tumor is still there, smaller now, stable, but present. I take medication, go to regular appointments, live with the knowledge that my time might be more limited than other people's. But I also live with the knowledge that I survived something designed to destroy me completely, not the cancer, but the betrayal that came with it. David writes me letters from prison sometimes. Apologies, explanations, requests for forgiveness. I don't read them anymore. Dr. Morrison screens my mail now, saves me from that particular toxicity. But I hear he's not doing well in prison. Turns out attempted murders aren't popular, even among criminals. Lisa sends birthday cards. I have no idea why. Dr. Morrison thinks it's guilt. Or maybe hope that I'll put in a good word when she applies for early probation. I send them back, unopened. Some relationships aren't worth salvaging, no matter how pretty the apology. The hardest part of surviving isn't the medical stuff, it's learning to trust again. To believe someone when they say they love you without calculating what they'd gain from your death. To accept help without wondering what the helper's real motives are. To let people close enough to matter, knowing they might leave when things get difficult. But I'm learning. Dr. Morrison says trauma recovery isn't about forgetting what happened, it's about remembering you survived it. Every day I wake up is a victory David never planned for me to have. Sometimes people ask if I'm grateful for what David did to me. The question always makes me laugh. I'm not grateful for betrayal or attempted murder or having to rebuild my entire life from scratch. But I am grateful for what I discovered about myself in that forest, that I'm stronger than I knew, more resilient than I imagined, and absolutely unwilling to let other people write my obituary while I'm still breathing. Today marks 1 year since David left me to die. I spent it at the Second Chances Center, working with a woman whose husband convinced her to stop cancer treatment because it was too expensive. She's getting the care she needs now, and her husband is getting a divorce. Attorney, sometimes the best revenge is just refusing to stay dead. Dr. Morrison says my tumor is responding even better to treatment now than it was 6 months ago. She thinks the reduction in stress from getting David out of my life actually improved my immune function. Turns out betrayal is carcinogenic, but justice has healing properties all its own. I still design buildings sometimes, mostly treatment centers now, spaces designed for healing rather than just surviving. I speak at medical conferences about patient autonomy and the hidden violence of abandonment. I've learned to trust carefully and love fearlessly, which are not contradictions, but requirements for a life worth living. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if someone in your life is counting down the days until you're gone, if you feel more like a burden than a person, if your illness has become someone else's opportunity, please know this: you are worth more alive than dead, no matter what anyone tells you. Your story isn't over until you say it is, and sometimes the best plot twist is simply refusing to die on someone else's timeline. The trap David set for me became the door to a life I never could have imagined. Not because betrayal is good, but because surviving it taught me I could survive anything, including myself.